"Who hurt you?" the Alpha King whispered. By morning, half the pack was dead. On nights when the moon hung full and bright, the wind carried whispers, stories of the Alpha King who ruled the peaks and his pack of wolves, men who were both terrifying and magnificent. Alara moved quietly among the trees, her boots barely touching the frozen earth. She had been wandering for days, guided by a force she did not fully understand, a restless pull that led her into the heart of the cursed lands. Her long, dark hair clung to her face as she pressed through the undergrowth, her eyes catching every flicker of movement. She was alone, though she did not feel lonely. The solitude was a companion she had grown used to. But tonight was different. Tonight the air was heavy, charged with a strange energy. A sense of being watched crept over her. She paused, listening. The forest was quiet, yet she felt a presence. And then she heard it, a whisper carried on the wind, soft, almost intimate. "Who hurt you?" her breath caught. The voice was deep, resonant, familiar yet strange, as if it belonged both to the earth and to something beyond. It was not a question anyone should know to ask her, but somehow this voice did. Alara's hand went to her chest, heart pounding. She wanted to run, to disappear into the shadows, yet her feet remained rooted. She did not know why. "Who spoke?" she whispered to herself. The voice came again, closer now, like it had stepped through the trees. "Who hurt you, child of the night?" A figure emerged from the shadows. Tall, regal, with eyes that glimmered silver in the moonlight, he moved with a silent authority that made the forest itself seem to bend around him. His dark hair fell over his shoulders, and his cloak fluttered like a shadow caught in the wind. He was the Alpha King, Kalen, ruler of the moonlit peaks. His presence was both terrifying and magnetic, and Alara could not look away. She felt an unspoken weight pressing against her, a power that demanded attention, demanded recognition. I am not hurt," she stammered, though the lie felt hollow even as it left her lips. Kalen's eyes softened slightly, a flicker of understanding passing through them. "Do not lie to me," he said, his voice a gentle rumble that seemed to touch her very soul. "The world has left its mark on you. I can see it." Alara swallowed hard. No one had ever looked at her like this, as if they could see not just her face but the shadows hiding inside her heart. She wanted to flee, but her feet would not obey. Kalen stepped closer, and the forest seemed to shift with him, the air tightening around her. He did not reach for her, but she felt as though he could touch her soul with a mere glance. "Why are you here?" he asked, a note of curiosity underlining his words. I do not know," she admitted. She did not understand it herself. "I just followed something." "Something or someone?" he asked softly. Alara's eyes widened. How could he know? How could anyone know the silent pain that had guided her steps across mountains and valleys? I was running," she said, barely above a whisper, "from something I cannot face." Kalen nodded, as if he understood far more than she would ever say. "The night has a way of hiding the truth," he murmured, "and yet it always finds a way to speak." She looked up at him, and for a moment the wind seemed to pause. The moonlight bathed his face, revealing sharp features softened by something she could not name. There was sorrow there, a loneliness that mirrored her own. Alara felt a strange pull toward him, a dangerous curiosity that warned her to step back but also urged her to stay. "You should not be here," she said finally, trying to regain control of herself. "This land, it is not safe for someone like me." Kalen's gaze sharpened, a warning and a promise wrapped into one. "Perhaps it is not safe for anyone," he said, "but some are meant to walk through the danger, to face the shadows and perhaps to change them." The wind howled through the trees, and with it came the scent of other lives, wolves, men, the restless spirits that haunted these mountains. Alara felt a shiver crawl up her spine. She knew he was not exaggerating. "Come with me," Kalen said suddenly, turning toward a narrow path that led deeper into the forest. "I will protect you if you trust me." Trust. The word felt foreign on her tongue. She had spent her life learning to trust no one. And yet, Something in his voice, in the way he held himself, made her believe that perhaps, just perhaps, she could. She nodded, almost imperceptibly, and fell into step beside him. The forest seemed to shift around them, shadows stretching and bending as if acknowledging their union. As they walked, Kalen spoke little, yet his presence was enough to keep her alert, to make her aware of every rustle, every sound, every flicker of movement. He was a guardian and a predator, a king of shadows who walked lightly over the earth, yet whose gaze could pierce through darkness. Alara tried to speak, to break the silence. Who are you really?" she asked. Kalen's lips curved slightly, a ghost of a smile. "I am Kalen, alpha of this pack, protector of these lands, keeper of those who cannot protect themselves." Her heart skipped a beat. Protector, keeper. The words echoed inside her, stirring something long dormant, something she had tried to bury beneath years of solitude and fear. "Why me?" she asked, unsure why she even asked. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he glanced at her, and she felt as though he were reading her very thoughts. "Because you are not as lost as you think," he said finally. "And because I have seen shadows like yours before. I know what they can become." The path led them to a clearing where the moonlight fell like silver rain. Trees formed a natural cathedral around them, ancient and silent witnesses to their meeting. Kalen stopped and turned to her. "You must rest," he said. "The night is not done, and neither are the trials that follow you." Alara wanted to refuse, to continue moving, to escape the feeling that had settled over her. But exhaustion weighed her down, and the warmth of the clearing, the calm strength of Kalen beside her, made her nod. As she lay down, the shadows of the forest seemed to bend closer, curious, watchful. Kalen stood over her, silent, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. He did not leave, did not speak, did not need to. His presence alone was enough to calm the storm inside her. Hours passed. The forest breathed around them, a living entity whispering secrets only Kalen seemed to understand. Alara's eyelids grew heavy, and soon sleep claimed her. But even in dreams she felt him beside her, a constant, unwavering presence. And then came the first screams. Alara woke with a start, her heart racing. The clearing was no longer peaceful. Shadows had twisted into shapes, and the distant howls of the pack reached her ears. Something terrible had happened. Kalen was already moving, fluid and fast, commanding the shadows like extensions of himself. "Stay here," he ordered, though his voice held an edge of fear she had never heard before. "Do not move." She wanted to follow, to help, but she obeyed. She could only watch as he vanished into the darkness, his figure swallowed by the forest, leaving her trembling in the moonlight. Minutes or hours passed. The sounds of chaos slowly faded, leaving an uneasy silence. When Kalen returned, his face was unreadable, but his eyes were filled with a sorrow that cut deeper than any blade. "Alara," he said softly, kneeling beside her, "by morning half the pack is gone." Alara's mouth went dry. Half the pack. How could such destruction happen so quickly? Her mind raced. Was this her fault? Was it the curse she had been running from? Kalen's gaze met hers, and for the first time she saw vulnerability in the Alpha King, the man who had seemed invincible just hours ago. "And you are part of this," he said quietly. "Whether you understand it or not, your arrival set forces in motion that none of us could have stopped." Alara shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. I didn't mean to." "I know," he interrupted, his voice gentle now, almost a whisper again. "But intention does not erase consequence, and now we must face what comes next." The wind carried his words through the clearing, and Alara shivered. She knew, deep in her bones, that nothing would ever be the same. The moonlit peaks had claimed her. And Kalen, the Alpha King who whispered questions she could not answer, had claimed her heart, whether she wished it or not. And as the first light of dawn touched the treetops, she realized the truth. She was no longer alone. But in being with him, she had stepped into a darkness far greater than anything she had ever known. The sun rose over the moonlit peaks, painting the jagged cliffs with shades of red and gold. The forest below, which had seemed alive with shadows the night before, now shimmered with dew and light. But the beauty of the morning could not erase the sense of unease that hung over the land. Half of Kalen's pack was gone, and the silence left behind was heavier than any storm. Alara walked behind Kalen through the winding paths of the forest. Her legs ached, but she did not complain. She was learning slowly that the Alpha King moved through the world like a shadow in the wind, silent, purposeful, unyielding. Each step he took seemed to command the forest itself, as if the trees bent just slightly to let him pass. Kalen had said little since the attack, and when he did speak, it was only to give instructions or share information. Alara noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened, and the rare moments when his eyes softened as they caught the light. She wondered what he saw in her, why he had spared her from the dangers of the forest when half of his loyal pack had not been so fortunate. The path led them to a fortress perched atop a cliff, an ancient structure carved from stone and entwined with ivy. The walls were tall, cold, and unwelcoming, yet there was a beauty in the way the sun reflected off the sharp edges. It was a place of power, of history, and Alara felt the weight of it pressing down upon her as she approached. "This is where you live?" she asked quietly, afraid her voice would break the fragile calm. Kalen did not answer immediately. He stopped at the entrance, turning to her with an unreadable expression. "It is more than a home," he said at last. "It is a refuge. A sanctuary for those who have nowhere else to go, and a prison for those who would harm it." The words made her shiver. She felt both welcome and unwelcome, as though she belonged and did not belong at the same time. Kalen led her inside, and the fortress opened into a grand hall, tall ceilings shadowed by heavy beams and walls lined with tapestries depicting battles, hunts, and ancient kings. The air smelled of wood, smoke, and the faint tang of iron. The scent of history, of power, of life lived in constant vigilance. Alara followed silently, taking in the details. Kalen stopped at a small room near the back, offering her a seat. "Rest here," he said. "The day will be long and you will need strength." She nodded, sinking onto the chair. I don't even know why I am here," she admitted. "I was just running." Kalen's expression softened just slightly. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "Sometimes the world forces us to run, but it is not the running that defines us. It is what we do when we stop." Alara stared at him, trying to understand the meaning behind the words. There was a wisdom there, a depth that made her feel small yet strangely safe. For a moment, she allowed herself to believe that perhaps she could find more than survival in this place. The fortress was not silent for long. One by one, the surviving pack members returned. They moved cautiously, keeping their distance from Alara, their eyes filled with suspicion and grief. Kalen's presence seemed to command respect, yet even he could not erase the pain of loss that hung over the hall. Alara watched as he spoke to them, his voice calm but firm, giving orders and comfort in equal measure. There was power in the way he led, but also a deep sense of responsibility. She realized then that being an alpha was not just about strength, it was about bearing the weight of every life under your care. After the pack settled, Kalen called her to walk with him along the fortress walls. The wind was cold, carrying the scent of pine and distant mountains. Below, the forest stretched endlessly, a sea of green shadowed with the memory of the night's attack. "You have power," Kalen said suddenly, breaking the silence. "I can feel it." Alara stopped, startled. "Power? I don't understand." He turned to her, his eyes piercing. "The curse you carry is not just a mark of pain. It is a gift, though a dangerous one. You can change the course of this land if you learn to control it." Her heart skipped a beat. She had always feared her gift, always hidden it, always told herself it was a curse meant to punish her. But Kalen, he did not recoil, did not fear. He spoke of it as if it were something precious, something rare. I don't know if I can, she admitted, her voice trembling. You will, he said simply. But first you must trust me. Trust that I will guide you even through the darkness you fear. The wind lifted her hair, brushing her face, and she felt a strange warmth in his gaze. It was as if the night itself had opened a small space of light just for them. Alara nodded, more to herself than to him. Trust was a dangerous thing, but perhaps it was the only path forward. They spent the rest of the day preparing for the challenges ahead. Kalen introduced her to the remaining pack members, some wary, others curious. He spoke of the forest's dangers, of the forces that had attacked them, and of the dark sorceress whose influence was creeping into the peaks. Alara listened, learning quickly, absorbing every detail. She realized that she was no longer a lone wanderer. She was part of something far larger than herself. As night fell again, the fortress took on a different character. Shadows stretched long across the stone floors, flickering in the torchlight. The hallways were alive with whispers of past victories and losses, and the air hummed with anticipation. Kalen brought Alara to a small balcony that overlooked the forest. The moon was high, casting silver light across the trees and cliffs. He stood close, yet not touching, and for a moment neither spoke. You should not feel guilty for what happened, he said quietly, breaking the silence. The forest demanded its price and we must pay it together, but you are not to blame. Alara's eyes filled with tears she had held back for so long. I only wanted to survive, she whispered. Kalen's hand hovered near hers, then retreated. And you will, he said, but survival is not enough. There is more waiting for you, more waiting for both of us. And the path will be difficult, perhaps more than you can imagine. Her breath caught in her throat. She had felt danger before, she had faced it, but never like this, never with someone whose presence made her both safe and exposed, whose power made her heart race while calming the storm inside her. Then I will follow, she said softly, even if I do not understand. Kalen's lips curved slightly in a shadow of a smile. Good. Then you are ready for what comes next. The next day, Kalen led her deeper into the forest, to a place where the trees grew so close together that sunlight barely touched the ground. The air was thick with the scent of moss and earth, and the faint sound of running water echoed through the shadows. Here he began to teach her how to sense the flow of energy in the forest, how to control the strange power that had haunted her, and how to protect herself from both physical and supernatural threats. Alara struggled at first, but Kalen's guidance was patient, precise, and unyielding. You must focus, he instructed. Do not think of what frightens you. Think only of what you wish to create. She closed her eyes and tried. Slowly she felt a warmth spreading from her chest, a light that grew and pulsed in time with her heartbeat. It was a strange, comforting sensation, like the forest itself had taken her in its arms. Kalen watched her carefully, his expression unreadable. Good, he said after a long moment. You are stronger than you think. The bond between them grew in these days. Not through words, but through shared moments of silence, through glances that lingered longer than they should, through touches that were almost accidental but carried meaning nonetheless. They were two lost souls finding each other in the darkness, and the forest around them seemed to recognize it, responding with whispers and shadows that danced in acknowledgement. Yet, even as they grew closer, the danger loomed. One evening, as they returned to the fortress, a pack member appeared, his face pale and eyes wide with fear. There is someone inside, he stammered. Someone who does not belong. They know about Alara, about her power. Kalen's jaw tightened. Inside the fortress, he asked, voice low and hard. How? The pack member shook his head. I don't know, but they are planning something, something that could destroy everything. Alara felt a chill run through her. She had hoped the fortress would be a sanctuary, a place of safety. Now it seemed that danger was closer than ever, creeping even into the walls meant to protect her. Kalen placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. We will face it, he said quietly. Together. Her heart raced at the words. Together. It was a simple word, but it carried a weight she could not describe. A promise, a warning, a bond she was not yet ready to fully understand. As they entered the fortress, the moonlight shining through the windows cast long shadows across the hall. The sense of unease was thick, yet Kaelin's presence was a shield, a reminder that even in darkness there could be light. And in that moment, Alara realized that her journey had only just begun. The shadows were watching, the forest was waiting. And the Crimson Pact, the unspoken bond between her and Kaelin, was about to be tested in ways she could not yet imagine. The forest under the moonlit peaks was not as it appeared by day. At night, it shifted, alive with whispers and shadows that seemed to move with intent. The blood-red moon hung low in the sky, casting the world in an eerie glow. The wind carried faint voices, soft and haunting, that seemed to call out to those who dared wander in its depths. Alara walked cautiously beside Kaelin, her heart beating with a mix of fear and anticipation. They had been warned that the forest would not welcome outsiders, that its spirits tested all who entered. But for her it was more than that. The forest seemed to recognize something inside her, something she had yet to understand. "You feel it, don't you?" Kaelin's voice broke the silence. He moved with effortless grace, silent as a shadow, yet every step carried authority. "The forest, it knows you." Alara nodded, unable to find words. She had felt it earlier, a strange warmth pulsing through her chest as she walked beneath the twisted trees, a resonance that made her feel alive and terrified at the same time. "It reacts to your power," Kaelin continued, his eyes scanning the shadows. "Your curse or your gift, whatever you choose to call it, it is unlike anything I have ever seen. The forest responds to it." Alara's hand trembled slightly. I don't know if I can control it. "Last time I almost hurt someone." Kaelin's gaze softened, yet there was steel behind his words. "You will learn, you must, but control is not just about willpower, it is about understanding. Feeling the rhythm of life, the energy around you and moving with it instead of against it." She swallowed hard and nodded. Kaelin's calm confidence gave her courage, though her heart still raced. She wanted to be strong, to master the gift she had feared for so long, but the forest seemed determined to test her, to draw out her fears and uncertainties. They moved deeper into the shadows, the forest thickening around them. The trees were ancient, gnarled, their roots weaving together like living veins beneath the earth. Strange lights flickered in the distance, and faint whispers floated on the wind. Every step brought a new sensation, images, feelings, even memories that were not hers. "Alara," Kaelin said, his voice cutting through the eerie stillness. "Focus. Do not let the forest take your mind. You are stronger than its illusions." She nodded again, forcing herself to breathe slowly to center her thoughts. Slowly she felt the warmth inside her pulse in rhythm with the forest, as if the trees themselves were breathing with her. It was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. A soft rustling reached their ears and both stopped. Kaelin's eyes narrowed. "We are not alone." From the shadows emerged a figure draped in dark robes. The air around her shimmered, as if reality itself bent to her will. Her eyes glowed faintly, and her voice, when she spoke, carried a chilling resonance. "So the Alpha King walks with the girl who carries the curse," she said, her gaze fixed on Alara. "I have been waiting for this moment." Kaelin stepped in front of Alara, his stance protective yet measured. "Who are you?" he demanded. "And what do you want?" The sorceress smiled, a thin, unsettling curve of her lips. "I am called many names, but you may call me Selara. As for what I want, I desire only what has been taken from me. And that girl," her gaze flickered to Alara, "holds the key to it." Alara felt a chill creep up her spine. I don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "I am not your key to anything." Selara's laughter was soft, like wind over dry leaves. "Ah, but you are. Your power is not simply a gift, child. It is the legacy of forces older than these mountains, older than even your Alpha King. And you are only beginning to grasp its strength." Kalen's eyes darkened. "You will leave," he said firmly. "Now, or you will face the consequences." Solara's smile widened and she raised her hands. The shadows around them stirred, twisting and moving like living things. "Consequences are already here," she whispered. The forest seemed to respond to her words, the air growing thick, heavy, and strange. Alara's chest tightened as she felt her power awaken, the warmth inside her growing hotter, brighter, pulsing with a rhythm she could not fully control. The trees shivered, leaves rustling like whispers in the wind. Shadows shifted unnaturally, and Alara realized that her fear alone could shape the forest. "Focus," Kalen said again, his voice steady and commanding. "Do not let her control you." Alara closed her eyes and reached inside herself. She felt the pulse of life, the rhythm of the trees, the heartbeat of the earth, even the faint tremor of the mountains. Slowly, she extended that warmth outward, a soft, glowing light that pushed against the shadows around them. Solara faltered, her expression flickering with surprise. You can fight it," she hissed, "but you are still untrained and so easily swayed by the Alpha King." Kalen's eyes met Alara's. In that silent exchange, there was trust, understanding, and something deeper, something neither of them could name yet, but both felt intensely. She drew strength from him as he drew strength from her, and together they created a shield that held back the sorceress's influence, if only for a moment. "You are strong," Kalen said softly after a tense silence. "Stronger than you realize, but strength alone is not enough. You must learn to control your gift, to master it before it masters you." Alara nodded, breathing heavily. She had never felt so alive, so powerful, yet so vulnerable all at once. Her gift was no longer something she could ignore. It was a part of her, a force that could shape the world and determine the fate of those she cared about. Solara's form began to fade, her voice echoing through the trees. "This is not over. Your bond with him, it will be tested. And soon you will face a choice, power or love, and one will demand a sacrifice." With that, the shadows swallowed her, leaving only the faint flicker of her robe in the distance. The forest grew silent again, though the tension lingered like smoke. Kalen turned to Alara, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Are you all right?" he asked, concern clear in his voice. Alara nodded, though her heart still pounded. I think so," she whispered. "But she knew about me. How could she know?" Kalen shook his head. "It does not matter yet. What matters is that you survived and that you began to understand the power you carry. But you must be careful. Solara will not give up so easily, and the danger she brings, it is not just to you. It is to everyone in this forest, to my pack, to this land." Alara looked at him, her chest tight with emotion. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she said. "I never wanted this power, and I never wanted anyone to die because of me." Kalen's gaze softened. He crouched slightly, bringing his face closer to hers. "None of us choose the burdens we are given, but we can choose how we bear them. And sometimes, even in the darkest night, we can find light." Her heart fluttered at his words. There was something in his voice, in his eyes, that made her feel both safe and exposed. The forest seemed to recognize it too, as if the trees leaned closer, listening. They began the journey back to the fortress, but the path felt different now. The forest was alive in a way that was almost tangible, as if it remembered the confrontation, as if it whispered secrets only they could hear. Alara felt the warmth of her power pulsing, stronger than before, yet balanced by Kalen's presence. She realized that she could not face this challenge alone, but with him, she could begin to understand what it meant to be truly strong. That night back at the fortress, the tension did not fade. Alara lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the pulse of her power as a steady rhythm against her chest. Kalen sat nearby, watching over the fortress and the surviving pack members. Though he did not speak, she felt his presence like a shield, a quiet promise that he would not let the darkness consume her. But even as she felt that bond, she could not shake the words of Solara. power or love, one will demand a sacrifice. The forest outside whispered in the wind, shadows dancing in the torchlight. Alara knew that the path ahead would test them both, not just against the sorceress, but against the fears, desires, and choices that lay hidden in their hearts. Kaelin's eyes met hers briefly in the moonlight, and in that moment no words were needed. They understood each other. They were bound not just by circumstance, but by something far deeper, a shared journey, a bond forged in darkness, and the promise of a future that neither could face alone. And as the night stretched on, the moonlit peaks held its breath, waiting for the reckoning yet to come. The moonlit peaks were silent that night, as if the mountains themselves held their breath. The air was thick with tension, the kind that made hearts pound and shadows twist unnaturally. Alara stood at the edge of the cliff, her dark hair catching the cold wind, her hands trembling slightly. Beside her, Kaelin was silent, his eyes scanning the horizon, every muscle in his body taut with anticipation. "This is it," Kaelin whispered, his voice low, steady, yet carrying a weight she could feel deep in her chest. "Tonight we face Selara. Tonight the choice is ours." Alara swallowed hard. Her pulse raced. For days she had trained, learning to control the warmth, the power inside her chest. And yet this was different. The forest below stretched endlessly, dark and alive, filled with secrets she could not see. But Kaelin's presence beside her grounded her, steadying the storm inside. "I'm ready," she said, though the words felt small. "I don't know what will happen, but I want to fight with you." Kaelin's lips curved slightly, a fleeting smile, and he reached for her hand. It was brief, but the contact sent warmth through her, a tether in the darkness. "Then we fight together," he said. They descended into the forest, moving silently through the shadows. Every step was careful, deliberate. The trees whispered, leaves brushing against each other like soft voices in the night. The forest seemed to acknowledge Alara, responding to the pulse of her power, yet it also carried a warning, the presence of Selara, near and unseen, watching, waiting. At the center of a clearing, the air grew still. The moon above turned blood-red, casting the land in crimson light. Selara stood there, her robes flowing as if alive, eyes glowing faintly in the shadows. "You have come," she said, voice melodic yet cold. "I wondered how long it would take before you accepted your destiny." Kaelin stepped forward, protective, yet his gaze flickered toward Alara, silently conveying strength, trust, and belief. "Selara," he said firmly, "this ends tonight. Whatever you seek, it will not be taken from this girl. She is under my protection." Selara laughed softly. "Protection? You cannot protect her from herself, and she cannot protect you from what is coming." Alara's chest tightened. She felt the warmth inside her pulse faster, responding to the tension. The forest itself seemed to bend closer, as if waiting for her decision. For a long moment, silence stretched, filled only with the wind brushing against ancient trees. Kaelin's voice broke the quiet. "Alara, trust yourself. Trust what you've learned. I will stand with you." Her eyes met his, and for the first time she felt not fear but clarity. Her power was not something to be hidden. It was not something to fear. It was part of her, part of what made her alive. And with Kaelin beside her, she realized she could face anything. She stepped forward, feeling the warmth inside her rise, spreading from her chest to her hands, then outward like soft light. The forest responded immediately, the shadows bending away, the leaves trembling as if alive. Selara's eyes widened with surprise. You can control it," she whispered. "But this is only the beginning." Kaelin's eyes softened as he looked at Alara. "It is enough," he said. "For now it is enough." Alara raised her hand slightly, letting the warmth flow, feeling it pulse in rhythm with the forest. The shadows around Selara wavered, as if uncertain how to respond. The sorceress lifted her arms, attempting to strike, but the light around Alara formed a barrier, not of force, but of energy shaped by understanding and control. "You are stronger than you think," Kaelin said, stepping closer to her. But remember, strength is not just power. It is choice and courage, and the will to protect those you care for. Alara nodded, drawing courage from his words. Slowly, steadily, she pushed forward, letting the light flow further, not to harm, but to shield, to hold back the darkness without giving in to fear. Selara's expression flickered frustration, surprise, and then respect. "You have grown," the sorceress said finally. "Perhaps I underestimated you, but this is not over. Darkness always returns." Kaelin's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps, but tonight it does not win." The forest seemed to sigh, the tension breaking slightly as the crimson moon shifted, the shadows retreating. The clearing felt lighter, though still charged with energy. Alara's chest heaved as she lowered her hands, the warmth settling into a steady glow that pulsed gently, a reminder of the bond between her and the land, and between her and Kaelin. Kaelin stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have done well," he said, his voice soft, almost intimate. "You trusted yourself and you trusted me. That is what makes you strong." Alara looked at him, her eyes reflecting the silver light of the moon. I could not have done it without you," she admitted. He smiled faintly, the first full smile she had seen. "And I could not have done it without you. We are stronger together, Alara. Never forget that." For a long moment they stood in silence, the bond between them deepening, a quiet understanding passing in the space between words. The forest around them seemed to settle, the whispers fading, leaving only the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant call of night birds. That night back at the fortress, there was no celebration, only quiet reflection. The surviving pack members moved cautiously, aware of the threat that Selara represented, but also of the new strength they now witnessed in Alara. She was no longer a scared girl running from her power. She was a force to be reckoned with, guided by Kaelin, yet uniquely her own. Alara lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the steady rhythm of her gift. It was no longer frightening. It was a part of her and part of her purpose. She thought of Kaelin, of his unwavering gaze, of the trust he placed in her. And she realized that her feelings had changed. They had grown, deepened, until she could not separate the bond they shared from the very breath in her lungs. Kaelin stood outside her door, silent, watching over the fortress as he always did. She felt the presence before she even saw him. She rose quietly and stepped onto the balcony beside him. The moon was low, silver light spilling over the peaks. "You're awake," he said softly. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted. "Not with everything that happened." He nodded, understanding. "The forest tests us in many ways, but it also teaches us, and you have learned well." Her gaze dropped to his hands, steady, strong, and protective. "Kaelin, thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself." His eyes softened, the silver light reflecting in them. "You don't need to thank me. I see who you are, Alara, and I see who you can become. You are not just strong, you are extraordinary." Her heart fluttered, a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with her gift. It was the presence of someone who truly saw her, who understood her, and who stood beside her no matter what shadows loomed. The night stretched quietly around them. For the first time since her arrival at the moonlit peaks, Alara felt something she had not felt in years: peace. A fragile, delicate peace, but real nonetheless. And as she leaned slightly toward Kaelin, feeling the warmth of his presence, she realized that even in darkness there could be light. Morning arrived slowly, the crimson moon fading into a pale silver dawn. The fortress seemed more alive, more aware, as if it recognized that its defenders had grown stronger, united by trust and courage. Kaelin stood at the edge of the cliffs, looking out over the forest, while Alara joined him. Together they watched as the first rays of sun illuminated the peaks, painting them with hope after the long night of shadows. "You saved more than the pack tonight," Kaelin said softly. "You saved yourself and perhaps me too." Alara looked at him, the words echoing in her mind. She realized that the bond between them was not just one of power or protection, but of choice, trust, and love, something rare, something to cherish and protect. I will stay, she said, her voice steady. With you. I will face whatever comes next, together. Kalen's lips curved into a smile and he reached for her hand, holding it firmly but gently. Then we face the future not as alpha and follower but as equals, as partners. The forest below stirred with life, the wind carrying the scent of pine and earth. Birds called in the distance, leaves rustled, and the peaks shimmered in the early light. It was a beginning, not an end, a promise that even in a world of shadows, they could create a light that would endure. Alara rested her head briefly against Kalen's shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the strength of his presence, and the warmth of their bond. The moonlit peaks had claimed her, yes, but in the claim it had also given her something extraordinary: trust, courage, and a love forged in darkness and tempered in light. And as they stood together, watching the sun rise over the mountains, Alara knew that whatever challenges awaited them, whatever darkness might return, they would face it side by side. The Alpha King had whispered once, "Who hurt you?" And in the echo of that question, she had found not just survival but redemption and a bond that would not break. The forest held its breath no longer. Life moved forward. Shadows receded, at least for now. And for Alara and Kalen, the moonlit peaks were no longer just a place of danger. They were home.